The story begins at a time when a strange virus had spread across the planet. It wasn't man-made, nor did it act like a typical disease. But soon it became clear that this mysterious plague was killing every female on Earth, one by one. Scientists tried desperately to find a solution, but they failed, and more than half the world's female population was already gone. Eventually, seeing a woman became almost impossible. Humanity was losing its ability to continue its own species, and even men's bodies began to change. And yet one truth remained: without females, human civilization was doomed. Amid all this chaos, we meet a man named Cain. He once had a beautiful wife, Lily, who also fell victim to the black virus. Cain loved her deeply, and just before she died, she gave birth to their baby. Cain named the child Rek, a name he adored. But the shocking truth was that the baby was a girl, the last thing Cain wanted anyone to discover. Because if the men of this new world ever found out he had a daughter, their brutal desperation would be unimaginable. Out of fear for her life, Cain hid the truth completely. As Rek grew older, Cain cut off her hair and raised her as a boy so no one would suspect she was female. Rek slowly began to understand the situation, and Cain did everything in his power to protect her. He made sure she knew only one rule: you are a boy. No matter what, never reveal your real identity. Because of this, Cain never trusted anyone and kept moving from place to place with his daughter, sometimes living in forests, sometimes in icy wastelands, sometimes in abandoned deserts. Their journey felt endless. As Rek got older, she understood more and more. One night, while the two of them slept in their small tent, Cain told her stories like he always did, stories about a powerful being who once created life on Earth. Cain also tells her that the Creator intentionally designed humans in pairs, one male and one female, so that future generations could continue. But now, it seems that this Creator is angry. He has taken all the females back, leaving only males behind. Hearing this, Rek begins to question her own existence. If she is a female, does that mean there is no one else like her left on Earth? Cain lies to comfort her, saying it's possible a few females might still be alive somewhere. But the truth is harsh. Hypothetically, the only female left on the entire planet is Cain's daughter, Rek. No matter what happens, Cain cannot allow his daughter to fall into the hands of other men. That's why he keeps reminding her to cut her hair, act like a boy, and never let anyone suspect the truth. Whenever they travel, he makes sure Rek is dressed completely like a boy. So far, no one has discovered her secret, but the days ahead will test them in ways they cannot imagine. The next morning, deep in the forest, Cain goes to collect water when he suddenly spots an old man walking nearby. Cain quickly signals Rek to hide inside the tent and stay there until he calls her. He then approaches the old man and warns him that the forest is too dense and dangerous to wander through. Before the man can respond, Rek steps out of the tent, staring curiously at him. Cain is furious, but thankfully the old man fails to notice she is a girl and simply asks for directions before leaving. Even though the danger has passed, Cain had been terrified for a moment. He scolds Rek, reminding her she wasn't supposed to come out. But Rek, now older, can't understand why they must live in constant fear. She knows they can't spend their entire lives hiding. Instead of avoiding people, she wants to talk to them, understand them, and discover what the world has become. Cain, however, knows the brutal truth: these men roaming the earth aren't just survivors, they've become monsters. He can't tell Rek the full horror, but he warns her that these men may look normal, yet trusting them could mean death. With this fear in mind, he convinces Rek to stay close and keep moving with him. After the old man leaves the forest, Cain decides they can't remain there even for another second. The place could be crawling with danger. He tells Rek to gather their belongings, packs up the tent, and leads them away. Rek is frustrated. She wants to meet other people, not just her father. She's growing older, curious, and eager to explore the world beyond their constant running. But Cain keeps her close, determined to protect her at all costs. They eventually find a cluster of abandoned houses deep in the forest, quiet, untouched, and seemingly safe. They decide to stay for a while. Before settling in, Cain carefully checks every corner for security. He stores their supplies at a distance so that if someone attacks, at least their resources will remain protected. He even builds a secret escape route so they can flee quickly if needed. Once everything is secure, Cain begins preparing food, though worry gnaws at him. Rek is growing up fast, and with age will come independence, something she will eventually demand. Cain can only hope the world changes before she reaches that point. Suddenly, Rek begins blowing her whistle loudly, the emergency signal Cain told her to use only in extreme danger. His heart drops. He sprints toward her as fast as he can and grabs her in a tight embrace, terrified of what might have happened. Rek pointed toward another abandoned house. Cain rushed inside with her, and the sight immediately froze him. 2 dead bodies lay on the floor, both clearly female. The plague had taken its toll on them as well, and without medicine, they hadn't survived. It was a horrifying scene, but it hit Rek the hardest. Cain quickly pulled her away, took her back inside their shelter, fed her, and told her to rest. They talked for a long time. The image of those bodies still haunted Rek. She kept asking why they died. If all females were gone, how was she still alive? Cain tried to comfort her, telling her maybe those women had been sick for a long time, which made the plague hit them harder. Back then, there were no medicines or antidotes, but now scientists had advanced, and perhaps they had found a solution. Rek didn't believe it. She argued that if the plague was getting weaker, they didn't need to live in fear anymore. She wanted to reveal her identity as a female because she felt she deserved to live freely. But Cain refused. Even if the illness had faded, the men wandering the world were far more dangerous than any disease. Until the world became safe again, she had to stay hidden. Rek lay awake all night, lost in her thoughts. The next morning, when she went to Cain, he told her they needed to go into town for supplies. Their food was running low. Rek felt a spark of excitement at the idea of finally seeing more of the world. But Cain immediately reminded her to dress like a boy. No one could know the truth. Rek felt crushed once again, forced to hide who she really was. Rek felt disappointed, but she told her father that while they were in town, she also wanted to visit the library. She loved reading, and she needed new books. Cain reluctantly agreed. Together they headed toward the town, a place filled only with angry, volatile men where even a small mistake could get them killed. Rek disguised herself so well that no one could tell she was a girl. Cain reminded her repeatedly not to talk to strangers. When they reached a supply vendor, the man looked at Rek and asked her name. Rek stayed quiet, and Cain immediately stepped in, introducing her as his healthy son. The vendor didn't suspect a thing. Instead, he started talking to Cain about how China was experimenting with artificial women, synthetic females designed to fulfill men's needs and repopulate the world. Rek was stunned hearing all this, but Cain didn't stay there long. They collected their supplies and hurried to the library. Rek eagerly searched for books she liked, piling them into her arms. But Cain watched her with growing concern. She was becoming more independent, more curious, and he feared she might one day leave him. She deserved a real life of her own, but the world was far too dangerous for her. Cain picked up a book himself, one on how to raise daughters, hoping it would help him understand Rek better and care for her the right way. After gathering everything they needed, they left the library. On the way, Rek kept asking why her height wasn't increasing like the book said women's height should. Cain gently explained that not everything written in a book is absolute truth, sometimes you have to trust your own experiences instead. After they returned home and sat down to eat, Rek couldn't stop talking about the man who mentioned China's experiments. She didn't understand how 2 humans could create a third one, so she asked Cain with innocent curiosity. Cain gently explained that nature gives men and women a special ability. When they come together, a process occurs that creates a new life. But according to that vendor, babies could now be created in laboratories too. Cain made it clear that real children should only be born naturally. Anything made artificially goes against nature. Rek felt embarrassed and apologized, but Cain wasn't upset at all. He reassured her that as she grew older, her body would change on its own, and she'd understand everything naturally. Maybe by then, the world would be safer too. Rek then asked about her mother, what she was like, how she behaved, because Lily had died moments after giving birth. Cain told her how deeply he still loved Lily, even though she was gone. The bond they shared remained alive in his heart. A flashback showed him holding Lily in her final moments. He couldn't imagine living without her. With her last breath, Lily asked him to take care of their daughter, give her everything she needs, and raise her to be independent. That moment broke Cain, but he has tried to honor her wish ever since, although he still struggles to give Rek true freedom because of the dangers outside. Rek drifted into thoughts of her mother, almost feeling her presence. Cain promised her that one day she would be independent and free to live however she wanted. The next morning, Cain followed his routine, sitting quietly and reading the book about raising daughters, hoping it would help him become the father Rek truly needed. Maybe he would discover something important. Now imagine a future where a situation like this actually comes true, where every woman on the planet has completely disappeared. Then how would human civilization continue? The truth is, without females, humanity simply wouldn't exist. No matter how advanced we become, without women we are nothing. But if such a crisis ever happened and the goal was to keep our species alive, there are several techniques we could use to continue future generations. The first method is cloning, which is still used today on various animals. In this process, cells or DNA from a male body are extracted and inserted into a donated female egg or an artificial egg. With the right combination, an embryo is created artificially, and that embryo can grow into a human child. For now, this technique is used very rarely, but if all women were gone, demand for it would be massive. Another concept is the test tube baby method, where male sperm is used in a laboratory to create new life. But of course, without a real female egg, this becomes extremely difficult. That leaves one final technique, genetic reprogramming, or what some call sex conversion, turning a male into a female using artificial biological methods. With today's technology, this could become possible. Even if the children born from such a process wouldn't be entirely natural, humanity could still survive. But here, the story takes a different direction. Ken was sitting in his house when he suddenly noticed a group of men gathering outside his window. It was a large group of male survivors, growing in number every day. Panicking, Ken immediately hid Rack inside a cupboard and quietly moved toward the door. Outside, the voices of those men echoed through the hallway as they demanded he open the door. Ken asked them what they wanted, and the men outside said they just needed drinking water and wanted to check who was living inside. Even after they kept insisting, Ken refused to open the door and told them to leave immediately. One of the men then claimed Ken was the same guy who had come into town earlier with his son to gather supplies. Ken didn't respond, but he knew these men wouldn't walk away easily. So he rushed upstairs, grabbed his daughter Rack, and escaped through the hidden passageway he had built himself. His instincts were right, the secret route was now their only lifeline. They gathered whatever supplies they could and ran deep into the forest. By then, the men had already broken down the door, but they found nothing inside. Ken and Rack kept running until they reached an abandoned church. After blocking all the doors and windows, they decided to stay there for the night. But Rack was growing more anxious, she couldn't sit still. Later that night, she asked her father what would happen when she was alone and people like those men came searching for her. Their supplies were running low, and she was terrified. Ken told her not to think too far ahead, that all they could do was survive one day at a time. No matter what happens, they couldn't stop or lose hope, because someday they would finally be safe. He spent the whole night calming her down, and when morning came, they left immediately. Too many people had seen them, and staying there any longer would have been dangerous. Ken told his daughter they were heading to her grandmother's house hidden deep in the mountains, even though it was far away. He believed they might finally be safe there. Rack asked why they hadn't gone earlier if it was so safe. Ken explained that the area had almost no resources, surviving there would be extremely difficult. But now, nothing was more important than staying alive, and the mountains were their best chance. Ken carried a rough map that would guide them to her grandmother's house, but the journey was going to be long, so they needed to gather as many supplies as possible. Rack now fully understood and supported him, and together they began the trek. Snow had started falling, and the temperature continued to drop. On the road, Ken spotted a car and tried to hitch a ride. The driver, a kind young man, let them in and offered to take them farther. Ken explained where they needed to go, and the boy told him whatever directions he knew. Seeing Rack, the boy assumed she was just another male survivor, so he didn't react much or question anything. Then the boy said something that completely shocked Ken. Instead of traveling so far into the mountains, he suggested they come with him to his settlement, where everything was well organized and fully stocked. They grew their own food, managed their own resources, and lived comfortably. He even revealed that their community had several underground bunkers where women were still alive, hidden away for their own safety. These women were never allowed to go outside, and he personally helped bring them supplies from nearby towns. Ken stared at the boy in disbelief, it sounded like a joke. As far as he knew, there were no women left anywhere on Earth. So the boy's story felt like he was breaking all known rules of this new world. Rack was sitting quietly in the back, listening to everything. The idea of meeting other women instantly excited her. But Ken felt something was off. His instincts warned him, and suspicion started to build. Without wasting a moment, he told the boy to stop the car, grabbed Rack, and stepped out. The boy tried convincing him that he meant no harm, that he was a good person who helped others. But all Ken cared about now was keeping his daughter safe. He demanded the boy's car, explaining he had a long journey ahead. Ken told him that if he wanted a fight, he'd fight, but he was taking the car no matter what. Understanding their desperation, the boy didn't resist. Ken quickly put Rack inside the vehicle and drove off. Yes, the boy had helped them, but Ken felt completely helpless and desperate. Nothing mattered to him except his daughter. The temperature around them was dropping fast, but using the map, they finally reached the mountain area. After walking through the forest, they arrived at a small house that belonged to Rack's grandmother. Ken knocked on the door, and it opened, but the woman they expected wasn't there. Instead, 3 unfamiliar old men were living inside. Confused, Ken asked them what had happened to Rack's grandmother, who used to live there. One of the old men explained that they had been living there for many years, and when they first arrived, the house was completely abandoned. Ken realized that Rack's grandmother was most likely dead. At Ken's request, the old men allowed him and Rack to stay for a while. Ken took his daughter upstairs without telling anyone she was actually a girl. He continued pretending she was his son and said they'd stay for a few days. They settled into the upper room and set everything up to live comfortably. Soon, one of the old men came upstairs and called them down for food. Ken and Rack felt safer here than anywhere they'd been recently, and for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel the same constant fear. Rack spent most of her time with that old man, playing games and talking with him. Ken, after seeing her so relaxed and happy, finally felt a small sense of relief, like she was getting a bit of her childhood back. A few days later, the same old man approached Ken and asked, "Is this really your daughter? Do you have any proof?" Ken immediately insisted that Rack was his son, but the old man gently revealed that he already knew the truth. He told Ken there was no need to be afraid. He had lost his wife and several daughters during the outbreak, so he understood why Ken was trying so hard to protect his child. Hearing this, Ken finally opened up and admitted that Rack was indeed his daughter. He even showed the old man a family photo of his beautiful wife, who had died during the plague. Ken was heartbroken as he talked about her. The old man comforted him, saying that time heals wounds and that the survivors must continue moving forward together. Ken told him plainly that right now he was living only for his daughter. That night, Ken and Rack went to sleep the same way they always did, sharing stories and holding on to the only peaceful moments they had left. But they had no idea how quickly everything was about to change. The next morning, as Ken woke up, he spotted 3 men approaching the house from a distance. Alarmed, he rushed to the old men and asked who they were. But one of them hurried straight to the door and slammed it shut. At that moment, Ken finally understood that the old man had betrayed them. He was the one who had called those 3 men. Panicking, Ken grabbed Rack and rushed her upstairs, telling her to hide, but he also knew they couldn't stay trapped inside. They had to escape before those men got to them. Ken brought Rack to a small window and helped her climb out. The drop was high, and if she fell wrong, she could easily break her leg, but he had no choice. He told her she would have to protect herself now, no matter how hard it was. With all the strength he had, he lowered her through the opening, and Rack managed to land safely and run ahead. When Ken tried to follow, one of the intruders jumped him from behind. They struggled violently, throwing punches and slamming each other into the walls, until Ken managed to grab the man's weapon and kill him. But the second man immediately appeared and dragged Ken down the stairs, trying to overpower him. Ken knew that if he died now, his daughter wouldn't survive. Fueled by sheer desperation, he fought back and killed the second man as well. When he finally reached the ground floor, he saw that the 2 old men were already dead. That meant the third intruder, the young one, was still somewhere inside, hunting for Rack. As soon as Ken opened the door, the last man lunged at him. He attacked with brutal force, injuring Ken severely and even shooting him. Ken collapsed, bleeding and unable to fight anymore. It looked like he wouldn't make it. But suddenly, a gunshot echoed behind them. It wasn't an enemy, it was Rack. She had fired the shot herself, killing the last man. In that moment, the survival skills Ken had taught her finally saved both their lives. After narrowly escaping danger, Kane carries his daughter, Rag, to safety, though he himself is badly wounded. A short distance away, they discover a small abandoned house, and Kane decides they should rest there for a while. With trembling hands and sheer determination, Rag manages to remove the bullet lodged in her father's body, doing everything she can with the limited resources she has. Kane is so weak from blood loss and exhaustion that he eventually collapses into unconsciousness. Even while fading in and out, one fear haunts him: what will happen to his daughter if he doesn't survive? She's still young, untrained, and unaware of how cruel the world has become. But when Kane finally wakes after some time, he's stunned by what he sees. Rag is outside gathering resources, preparing food, watching for danger, and even fortifying the small shelter to keep them safe. She moves with a calm confidence that Kane never expected in someone her age. Seeing his daughter step into such responsibility overwhelms him emotionally. After witnessing so many terrifying moments, Rag has grown far beyond her years. She now understands that she must protect herself, and her father, if they want to stay alive. She even tells Kane about rumors she heard from an old man, claiming there are safe zones in New York where women are protected and cared for. Maybe they could go there, she says, and finally live without fear. But Kane isn't sure whether those stories are true or just desperate lies. They don't even know how far away that place is or whether it still exists. The weight of uncertainty crushes him, and Kane breaks down in tears. Rag immediately hugs him, comforting him like he once comforted her. In that moment, it becomes clear, they are all each other has left in this ruined world. They can't trust anyone else, and their future is completely unknown. But even with all the uncertainty, their bond is what keeps them moving forward. And with that, the story comes to an end.